Good afternoon. My name is V, and my most recent read was a book called A Long Stretch of Bad Days by Mindy McGinnis. So this story is set in a small town called Henley, and it's the kind of place where appearances matter a lot, where people don't like to, quote unquote, hurt other people's feelings and don't like to cause any kind of trouble. So this can be something like this woman who broke her knee and ended up crawling through several acres of snow to reach her daughter's house, even though she had her cell phone on her, just because she didn't want to call an ambulance and have the sirens bother her neighbors. But it can also mean much more sinister things, like any kind of trouble that happens gets essentially swept under the rug and ignored or forgotten about. The main character, Lydia, is a budding journalist. She is about to graduate from high school and applying for a bunch of really prestigious schools like Columbia and Harvard. And she discovers at the start of this particular book that she may not actually graduate after all, despite all her hard work and having the best grades in her school, because their guidance counselor made a really serious mistake and she is falling short in her history credits. Basically, she doesn't have enough credits to graduate, and it's the fault of her guidance counselor because he has had, I suppose he's not really their counselor anymore at this point, had a drinking problem, but nobody wanted to point it out because, like I said, it's the kind of town where people don't like trouble of any kind and bad things get ignored, and people like to pretend that everything is always peachy. Well, she's really upset about this, and she's actually not the only student this has happened to. It's also come to her attention that this other girl at school called Bristol has the same issue where she doesn't have the history credits necessary to graduate, but they're two really different girls. They get offered the opportunity to make up those history credits by doing some type of reporting assignment related to the history of their town, and I think it was the principal, asked the main character, Lydia, to retool the podcast. She does a YouTube channel stuff, to retool her probably podcasts in a way that helps explore the town's history and covers enough depth and scope to be a good replacement for a history class that she didn't take. And she decides to invite Bristol to help her with this project for probably selfish reasons, I guess. She's really upset about what's happened, and she's upset about the town's tendency to ignore problems, and she partly actually sets out to try and unveil some of the uglier sides of her town, and she decides to focus her project on something that the town often refers to as just the long stretch of bad days. So she begins her investigation of a particular week in the town's history where several really momentous things happened. They had a really serious tornado that essentially destroyed what the town was at that time. They had a flash flood that killed a lot of animals in the animal shelter, and they had their one and only murder, which is also unsolved. So over the course of her investigations, both Lydia and Bristol begin to uncover some pretty dark secrets about the town and the people around them, and it starts to lead to, I guess, more than a few problems. And on top of all that, Lydia's already having other issues because her father is a defense lawyer who often takes on cases that make people very angry, like defending murderers and people who hold up buses at gunpoint and stuff like that. So her family's also been getting a lot of flack for that. So this story is I think something I liked was that it was a very thorough investigation kind of story, where she really starts to dig into this case of something that happened 30 years ago. I haven't really made up my mind yet, I guess, how I feel about everything, because I guess there isn't a lot I can say without giving things away, but suffice to say that I think I'm still digesting what happened in this book. But their search uncovers more than just a murder, also uncovers disappearances, and the story touches quite a bit on prejudice and certain ideas, both in regards to people's socioeconomic backgrounds, as well as like what it might mean to be a woman in a small town. And I think it really sums it up when Bristol mentioned, because when they discover things like disappearances and like other kinds of crimes, Lydia mentions that, because when she was talking, she mentioned that a lot of times people can fall through the cracks when you have so much happening, like with the tornado. And then Bristol replies that, yeah, the funny thing is that a lot of those cracks tend to be shaped like teenage girls. And I think that kind of encapsulates a lot of what this story touches on. I found it very interesting, but like I said, I think I'm still digesting it as a story and don't really know how I feel about it.